I don't know why I did it, but I couldn't just walk away." Olivia Martinez's voice trembled as the words spilled out, words that would forever alter the course of her life. At that moment, she had no inkling that the kind deed of paying for a meal for a stranger would upend everything she thought she knew about herself and the world around her. It was a seemingly ordinary day at Rocky's Café, a modest, time-worn establishment in the small town of Riverside, Ohio, yet that day would mark the beginning of a transformation she could never have imagined. Rocky's Café was more than just a place to grab a hot cup of coffee. It was the heartbeat of Riverside. Every morning, the low hum of the coffee machine mingled with the sizzle of bacon on the grill, while the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee and toasted bread wove its way through the air. Locals, many of whom had known one another for years, gathered there. Regulars didn't even need to glance at the menu. Olivia and her fellow servers remembered their orders by heart. For Olivia Martinez, 30 years old and working at Rocky's for over a decade, the cafe had become both her livelihood and a refuge from the hardships of life. Olivia had started working at Rocky's Café when she was just 20. Raised by her single mother after her father left when she was very young, she had learned early that the world was rarely kind to dreamers. Her mother had juggled 2 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads, and even then, there were nights when the bills piled up faster than the spare change in the tip jar. Life in Riverside wasn't glamorous, and the relentless grind of long shifts had taught Olivia that results mattered more than dreams. Yet, every now and then, the wisdom of the cafe's elder patrons, veterans of life with stories of loss, hope, and perseverance, would offer her a glimpse of something more. "You have to make your own way, kid," they would say kindly, slipping extra advice along with their tips. "Never forget to smile. That's what'll take you far." Despite the quiet encouragement from the regulars, there was an undercurrent of loneliness that plagued Olivia. In a town where everyone knew everyone's business, she sometimes felt as though she were invisible, just another face among many in the hustle and bustle of Rocky's. That feeling, however, was often punctuated by moments of genuine human connection, moments that, though fleeting, warmed her heart, and none would prove more significant than the encounter that day. It had been one of those sluggish afternoons when the lunch rush had dwindled to a trickle and the steady murmur of conversation mingled with the clinking of dishes. As Olivia weaved between the small, faded booths, her eyes caught sight of an elderly gentleman seated near the window. He was dressed in a simple olive-green jacket and a slightly rumpled button-down shirt. His hands, gnarled and rough with age, fumbled as he reached for his battered leather wallet. There was a quiet sadness in his eyes, a heaviness that spoke of a lifetime of hardships and unspoken sorrows. At first, Olivia paid him little mind. In a town like Riverside, many people carried burdens too heavy to share. But as she watched him struggle to extract a few bills from his wallet, his fingers trembling as if betraying a deeper fear of being unable to pay for his meal, her heart clenched in sympathy. She recalled too well the moments when she herself had felt the sting of shame at not having enough, the unspoken terror that one day she might not be able to provide even the smallest comfort for those she loved. Without hesitation, Olivia approached the man's table. Leaning forward with gentle concern, she said in a soft, reassuring tone, "Sir, please, don't worry about the check. I've got this one." The man looked up, his eyes flickering with a mix of surprise and reluctance. "You really don't have to do that," he murmured, in a voice roughened by years of hardship, his tone carrying both pride and vulnerability. He began, but Olivia interjected with a warm smile. "I insist," she replied firmly. "I want to help." After a long, silent moment, during which he studied her face with a curious intensity, the old man slowly nodded. He slipped his wallet back into his lap, and as Olivia returned to the register, she could feel his gaze following her, a silent thank you that spoke volumes beyond words. The cafe's atmosphere, already buzzing with low conversations and the familiar clatter of dishes, seemed to hold a secret that day. Although the routine continued, coffee was poured, plates were cleared, and the steady rhythm of everyday life persisted, the encounter had kindled something within Olivia. A small, unspoken bond had formed between her and the elderly stranger, a bond that transcended the mundane details of their daily existence. Later that evening, when Olivia finally returned home to her cramped apartment on the outskirts of Riverside, She felt a mixture of exhaustion and wonder. After tossing her purse on the worn couch and kicking off her scuffed shoes, she collapsed onto a threadbare armchair. The events of the day swirled in her mind like a half-remembered dream. And as she emptied her purse onto the kitchen counter, her fingers brushed against a small, crumpled piece of paper. It was the exact paper the old man had pressed into her hand before leaving Rocky's Café. For a long moment, Olivia stared at it, uncertain of what it might mean. She wasn't one for believing in fate or signs, and yet there was something inexplicably powerful about that simple scrap of paper, a token that hinted at a secret deeper than any she had ever encountered. Over the next few days, life continued as it always did. The mornings were long, and the work at Rocky's was relentless, but the memory of that paper lingered like a quiet promise in the back of her mind. 3 days after the fateful encounter, during another lethargic afternoon at the cafe, Olivia was busy wiping down the counter when her manager, Derek Lawson, called her into his cramped back office. His normally steady demeanor was marred by a nervous tension that made Olivia's heart beat faster. "Olivia, could you come here for a minute?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder with a look of concern. Sensing that something was amiss, Derek never acted this way unless it was serious. She nodded and followed him. The back office was a small, cluttered room that rarely saw much activity. Today, however, it held an air of anticipation. As she stepped inside, Olivia was met by the sight of a well-dressed man sitting behind a desk cluttered with papers. His charcoal grey suit and polished black shoes made him seem out of place in the humble surroundings of Rocky's Café. As soon as Olivia entered, the man stood, extending a hand in greeting. "Good afternoon," he said in a clear, measured tone. "My name is Samuel Parker." Olivia regarded him warily for a moment before asking, "And who do you represent?" Crossing her arms, she awaited his reply. Samuel smiled professionally and continued, "I represent Mr. Harrison Ellis." At the sound of that name, Olivia's heart skipped a beat. Mr. Ellis was the dignified gentleman she had helped just days earlier, the one whose silent struggle had left an indelible mark on her. His eyes, though weathered, still held a spark of life that belied the hardships he'd endured. Samuel settled back into his chair and set his sleek leather briefcase on the desk. "Mr. Ellis has asked me to extend his deepest gratitude to you for your kindness," he explained. "He was profoundly moved by your gesture and, in recognition of your generous spirit, has arranged for you to receive something very special." With deliberate care, Samuel opened his briefcase and withdrew a heavy envelope. He handed it to Olivia with a gentle nod. "Please, take this on behalf of Mr. Ellis. It is his way of saying thank you." Olivia's hands trembled as she accepted the envelope. "What is it?" she managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. Samuel's expression softened as he replied, "Inside you'll find a check for $30,000, a sum that we believe will help alleviate some of your burdens. There is also a letter from Mr. Ellis himself." Returning to her duties, Olivia could hardly concentrate on the work that followed. The entire shift felt like a blur of clattering dishes and muted conversations, her mind preoccupied with the envelope and the possibilities it might herald. By the time her shift ended and she arrived home, the weight of the day pressed upon her. In the solitude of her modest apartment, she sat at her rickety kitchen table, slowly unwrapping the envelope. Her breath caught as she read the letter in its elegant, deliberate script. The letter began, "I was once a man with nothing. No home, no money, no hope. Only a broken heart and a fierce will to survive. On one particularly dark day, when I had lost all hope, a kind waitress reached out and helped me without expecting anything in return. That single act of kindness lit a spark within me that has never dimmed. I have spent years seeking a way to repay that debt of gratitude. When I found you, I knew that fate had given me a second chance, a chance to help you rise above your hardships and pursue the dreams you've long set aside. Accept this gift not merely as money, but as an invitation to embrace the future you deserve. With deepest gratitude, Harrison Ellis." Olivia read and reread the letter, each word resonating deep within her. The check was life-changing. It could cover her mother's mounting medical bills, repair her aging car, and even allow her to start saving for a future she had only dared to imagine in quiet moments. Yet, The magnitude of it all left her feeling both elated and overwhelmed. How could someone who had once been invisible to the world now extend such generosity to her? In that moment, the line between fate and chance blurred into something almost miraculous. Over the next several days, the impact of that extraordinary gift began to settle in. Olivia's mind was a tumult of conflicting emotions. At Rocky's Café, the work continued as usual. Coffee cups clinked, plates were washed, and the steady stream of customers ebbed and flowed like the tide. Yet, for Olivia, everything had changed. Every time she caught a glimpse of the crumpled piece of paper the old man had once given her, now safely tucked away in her pocket, a spark of hope ignited within her. It was as if the universe had whispered that her life was about to take a dramatic turn. Late one afternoon, as she was busy refilling sugar dispensers and wiping down tables, her manager Derek called her into his office again. This time, the room was charged with an unfamiliar anticipation. Derek's eyes, usually calm and composed, were filled with both nervousness and excitement. "Olivia," he said softly, "there's something I need to discuss with you." Her pulse quickened as she stepped inside, unsure of what to expect. Before she could speak, the office door swung open once more. In walked a distinguished gentleman whose presence seemed to command the very air around him. Clad in a tailored midnight blue suit, his silver hair and warm, steady eyes gave him an aura of quiet authority. "Miss Martinez," he said, extending his hand. "My name is Oliver Grant, and I represent Mr. Edward Johnson." The name Edward Johnson resonated with a strange familiarity. Olivia's mind raced back to the letter from Harrison Ellis. Could it be that Mr. Johnson was somehow connected to that mysterious benefactor? Oliver's calm voice continued, "Mr. Johnson has been deeply moved by your kindness. In recognition of your selfless act at Rocky's Café, he has arranged for you to receive an opportunity that will change your life." Oliver opened his briefcase with deliberate care and produced a thick envelope. With a gentle smile, he pressed it into Olivia's hands. "Inside, you will find a check for $30,000 and, along with it, a full scholarship to Crestwood University, one of the nation's most prestigious institutions. Mr. Johnson believes that people like you, who embody true compassion, deserve every chance to succeed." For a long, silent moment, Olivia could only stare at the envelope in disbelief. Her heart pounded as she recalled all the years of hard work, the relentless struggle to keep afloat, and the many nights spent wondering if she would ever be more than just another overlooked waitress. Now, in one fell swoop, fate had presented her with the opportunity of a lifetime, a chance not only to change her financial circumstances, but also to finally pursue her long-forgotten dreams of education and self-improvement. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes as she slowly opened the envelope. The check, printed on high-quality paper, gleamed under the dim office light, a tangible promise of a new beginning. Alongside it lay another letter, its elegant handwriting echoing the words of Harrison Ellis's message of hope and second chances. "I cannot believe this," Olivia whispered, her voice barely audible. This is too much." Oliver's eyes softened as he replied, "Miss Martinez, Mr. Johnson knew you would say that, but he also believes that you deserve every blessing that comes your way. Your kindness, your hard work, these are the qualities that will carry you to greatness. It's time for you to leave behind the struggles of the past and embrace the future you've always dreamed of." The rest of that day passed in a hazy swirl of emotion for Olivia. At Rocky's Café, life continued as if nothing had happened. Regulars came in for their customary orders, and the clamor of everyday work went on uninterrupted. Yet every clink of a coffee cup and every murmur of conversation served as a reminder of the life she was about to leave behind. A life defined by endless shifts, modest earnings, and the quiet resignation of a soul that had known hardship all too well. When Olivia finally returned home that night, she sat at her battered kitchen table and carefully spread out the envelope, the check, and both letters before her. Under the soft glow of a single lamp, she read the words once more, letting them seep into her very being. The letters spoke of hope, of a life waiting to be transformed by the power of kindness and the courage to believe in oneself. In that quiet moment, she made a decision that would forever change her destiny. She would accept the gift, not as a means of escaping her past, but as a launchpad for a brighter future. One where she could honor the kindness that had been shown to her and, in turn, pay it forward to others. The following morning, as the first rays of dawn filtered through the curtains of her small apartment, Olivia awoke with a newfound resolve. With a deep, steadying breath, she packed a few belongings, closed the door on the life she had known, and set out on a journey toward Crestwood University. A journey that promised not only education, but also the chance to rediscover herself and her long-forgotten dreams. The decision wasn't made lightly. Every step away from Rocky's Café, every mile traveled on the long bus ride to Crestwood, was imbued with the bittersweet memories of years spent in struggle, and the hope that those years were finally coming to an end. At Crestwood University, Olivia discovered a world that was both exhilarating and intimidating. Surrounded by bright minds and towering libraries, she found herself immersed in a culture that celebrated ambition and intellectual curiosity. Classes were challenging, and the pace of life was frenetic compared to the slow, steady rhythm of Riverside. Yet, even in the midst of the whirlwind of new experiences, Olivia's heart remained anchored in gratitude. She often thought back to that fateful day at Rocky's, the elderly man whose silent struggle had ignited the chain of events that led her here. His memory was a constant reminder that even the smallest act of kindness could echo across a lifetime. In the months that followed, Olivia threw herself into her studies with a passion that surprised even herself. She majored in English literature, drawn to the power of words and the beauty of stories that transformed lives. Late nights in the campus library were punctuated by the soft rustle of pages turning and the distant hum of conversations among other determined students. In between classes, she would receive encouraging notes from professors who recognized her potential, and she began to share her own experiences. Stories of long nights at a diner, of sacrifice and quiet resilience, with classmates who listened intently, their eyes reflecting a mix of admiration and empathy. Olivia's journey was not without its challenges. The transition from the familiar confines of Riverside to the expansive opportunities at Crestwood was both thrilling and daunting. There were moments of self-doubt, when the weight of expectations seemed overwhelming, and times when she longed for the comforting routine of Rocky's Café. Yet, each time she felt herself falter, she recalled the kind words from the letter, words that urged her to believe in the promise of tomorrow. "Leave behind the struggles of the past," the letter had said. "Embrace the future you deserve." And so, with every setback, she found the strength to push forward. One crisp autumn evening, several months into her new life at Crestwood, Olivia was invited to an awards banquet honoring the achievements of students who had overcome significant obstacles. The grand ballroom was adorned with sparkling lights and elegant floral arrangements, the air buzzing with anticipation. As she walked in, dressed in a modest yet graceful navy dress, Olivia felt both pride and trepidation. She was acutely aware that her success was not solely hers. It was the culmination of every sacrifice, every tear shed in the quiet hours of the night back in Riverside. During the banquet, as she took the stage to accept an award for outstanding personal achievement, Olivia's eyes met those of a distinguished older gentleman seated in the front row. His gaze was warm and knowing, filled with unspoken understanding and a hint of mischief. In that brief, charged moment, she felt as though the universe was acknowledging her journey, a silent affirmation that her struggles and triumphs had not gone unnoticed. After the ceremony, while mingling with fellow students and faculty, a renowned literary agent named Veronica Ellis approached her. "Miss Martinez," Veronica said, her voice both professional and kind. "Your story is extraordinary. I believe you have a gift for storytelling that could inspire countless others. I would be honored to help you share your journey with a wider audience." Overwhelmed by the offer, Olivia hesitated for a moment before accepting Veronica's card. In that exchange, the quiet girl from Riverside, once invisible at Rocky's Café, began to understand that every act of kindness, every hard-fought moment of perseverance, had led her to this very moment of possibility. It was as if fate, with all its mysterious workings, had finally turned its generous hand in her favor. As the years passed, Olivia's life blossomed in ways she had never dared to imagine. She graduated with honors from Crestwood University, her accomplishments celebrated not only by her peers, but also by the community she had once known so well in Riverside. She continued to write, her work resonating with those who had faced their own struggles and found hope in the smallest gestures. Her first book, a collection of essays chronicling her journey from a humble waitress to a confident, successful writer, became a modest bestseller, and she was invited to speak at events, sharing her story of second chances and the transformative power of kindness. Yet throughout her remarkable journey, Olivia never forgot the simple truth that had set everything in motion. The elderly man from Rocky's Café, whose silent plea had kindled her own inner light, remained a symbol of hope. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, a single act of generosity can spark a chain reaction that transforms lives. Though she never encountered him again, his memory was woven into the very fabric of her being. Every time she felt the weight of the world pressing down upon her, she would reach into her pocket, feeling the soft crinkle of that once forgotten scrap of paper, and remember that even the smallest kindness can echo across a lifetime. One particularly chilly winter evening, as snow fell softly over the quiet streets of Riverside, Olivia returned to her hometown for a brief visit. The reunion was bittersweet. She was welcomed by old friends and familiar faces at Rocky's Café, where time seemed to stand still amidst the clatter of dishes and the warm chatter of longtime patrons. In that moment, she realized that her journey, though far from ordinary, was built on the foundation of the simplest of human connections. At a quiet corner table in the familiar diner, Olivia sat with a steaming mug of coffee, her thoughts wandering back to the day when her life had changed forever. She recalled the elderly man's downcast eyes and the gentle way he had accepted her help. More than the generous check or the scholarship, it was that moment of unselfish compassion that had ignited her determination to pursue a better future. In her heart, she knew that kindness, though sometimes fleeting, had the power to alter destinies in ways that defied explanation. During her visit, the manager of Rocky's, now a kindly older man named Franklin, approached Olivia with a tender smile. "I've heard about your success, Olivia," he said softly. "I always knew you were destined for great things. That day you helped Mr. Carter, I still remember how your smile lit up the room. You've carried that light with you, and I couldn't be prouder." Franklin's words, simple yet profound, filled her with gratitude and reinforced the belief that no matter where life took her, the bonds formed in that small diner would always remain a part of her. Back at Crestwood, as she continued to build her career and touch the lives of others through her writing and public speaking, Olivia made a promise to herself. She would pay forward every kindness that had ever been shown to her. In interviews and on stage, she often recounted the story of the day an elderly stranger's unspoken plea transformed her life. "I learned that life isn't just about surviving," she would say. "It's about living with compassion, believing in the goodness of people, and daring to dream, even when the odds are stacked against you." In time, Olivia became an ambassador for hope and resilience, her story inspiring countless young people across the nation. Universities invited her to deliver commencement speeches, and community organizations celebrated her work in promoting literacy and empowerment. Through it all, she never lost sight of where she had come from: the quiet streets of Riverside, the modest tables of Rocky's Café, and the tender moments of connection that had carried her through the darkest times. One summer evening, at a fundraising gala for underprivileged students, Olivia stood on a grand stage to receive an award for her contributions to community outreach and education. As the lights dimmed and the audience fell silent, she recounted her journey with heartfelt sincerity. "There was a day when a simple act of kindness, a single moment when someone cared enough to pay for my meal, changed everything for me," she said, her voice clear and resolute. "That day, I learned that even in a world that often seems indifferent, there is hope. And it is our duty to nurture that hope, to pass it on, and to believe that every good deed, no matter how small, has the power to change a life." The applause that followed was not just for her achievements, but for the universal truth that her story embodied. In that moment, Olivia realized that her life had become a beacon for others, a testament to the idea that even when circumstances seem insurmountable, the light of compassion can lead the way to a brighter future. Years later, as Olivia sat in a sunlit corner of a bustling community center, she reflected on her journey with a quiet sense of wonder. The path from Rocky's Café to Crestwood University had been long and arduous, marked by tears, uncertainty, and moments of profound revelation. Yet, every hardship had been softened by the memory of that one day, the day she chose not to walk away, the day she embraced kindness despite the odds. In her heart, she knew that the ripple effects of that simple act of generosity would continue to echo through the lives of countless others. Olivia's story became more than a personal triumph. It evolved into a legacy of hope. She dedicated herself to mentoring young people who struggled with self-doubt and financial hardship, always reminding them that their worth was not measured by the weight of their burdens, but by the light they carried within. Sometimes, she would say with a gentle smile, all it takes is one person to believe in you, to see the potential where you see only obstacles, and that one person can change everything. In the end, Olivia Martinez's journey was not just about escaping the confines of a challenging past or achieving academic and professional success. It was about reclaiming her identity, embracing the transformative power of compassion, and recognizing that even in the quiet corners of life, miracles can happen. Every page of her story, every word she wrote, echoed the truth that kindness is the most potent force of all, a force capable of shattering darkness and illuminating the path to a future filled with promise and possibility. And so, the legacy of that fateful day at Rocky's Café endured. A legacy woven into the fabric of Riverside, celebrated in every heartfelt conversation and every life touched by a single act of kindness. As Olivia continued to write, speak, and inspire, she held close the memory of the elderly stranger whose quiet struggle had set her on this incredible journey. His silent gratitude, passed on through a small, crumpled piece of paper, and the generous gift of a transformed future, remained a constant reminder that in a world that often seems harsh and unyielding, the smallest gestures of empathy can create ripples of change that extend far beyond our imagination. Thus, the story of Olivia Martinez, a story born from a simple act of compassion at a humble diner, became an enduring testament to the power of kindness, hope, and second chances. It is a story that reminds us all that no matter how small or overlooked we may feel, every life has the potential to shine brightly if we dare to believe in the promise of tomorrow.